Over the past few weeks, I've been processing a lot of raw lumber for a customer commission, and my table saw push block got chewed up in the process. Join me and I'll show you how to make one of the simplest safety devices for your table saw. How's it? My name is Dylan and this is Ply Creations. Welcome to my workshop. I have a very simple philosophy when it comes to using safety devices on my machinery and tools, and that is, if you have to concentrate more on using the safety device than what your machine is doing, it's probably not a good idea to use it. The push block I'll be showing you to build today definitely qualifies both as simple to use and simple to build, So simple to build, you'll probably wait longer for the glue to dry on it than the process of making it. No fancy handles, no fancy shaping, and it's an ideal project if you are a beginner. So I'll bring you into the bench, I'll show you what you need, and we'll get on with the build. Raw materials, anything will work. If you have MDF, if you've got leftover plywood, cut-offs, all of them will work. What I'm using is a section of birch ply. The thickness of this piece of ply is 18 millimeters, give or take about 3/4 of an inch. It's already in nominal length, so I won't be doing much as far as cutting goes. You'll need glue because we are laminating two sections together, so any wood glue will work. Of course, after you've glued it up, you'll need a clamp to hold it all together. So we'll be using a few of those. If you insist on doing a layout before you do the cutting, you'll need a square as well as a pencil to do the layout. But in my case, this section of plywood is already almost at nominal length. So I'm simply going to be ripping two sections out of this to the height at which I want the push block to be. Let's have a quick chat around the dimensions. So typically what I found works for me is lengthwise, I like it to be around about 250 millimeters long, roughly about 9.5 inches. This section of plywood that I am using is already at 240 millimeters, so it's close enough to where I want it. Height-wise is, so 240 lengthwise, then height-wise is I like around about 150 millimeters, or give or take 6 inches, and that will be the total height. The height dimension is the only dimension that is relatively critical, and that is because I did mention we're not putting any handles on this, and it's used by putting your hands over the push block. And what you do not want is for this height to be so low that when you put your hands around it, you risk cutting yourself with the moving blades. So that is the only semi-critical dimension. The reason we're laminating two sections together, and I'll show you on the thinner wood or plywood, is as I'm pushing the workpiece through, I'd like to avoid my push block tipping while I'm using it. So I prefer to have it a little bit wider at the bottom, and therefore I'll be laminating two of these together. So I'll be ripping out two sections and then proceeding to the glue up. So I'll take you over to the table saw. I'll cut the two sections out and I'll bring you back to the workbench so we can do the glue up. Got the plywood cut out and now it's on to the glue up. I use a product called Alkaline Ultra in my workshop. Closest approximation may be Tite Bond 3 where you are, if you don't have this available to you. Another tip, big surfaces I like to spread the glue evenly using a rubber ink roller. Find it really useful. I wrote an article for my website where I discuss, I think it was 5 non-woodworking items that I love using in my workshop for woodworking. And this is one of them. I love spreading the glue with that, especially on large surfaces. So another thing that may happen as we clamp the two sections of plywood together is you may have some slippage or movement between the two. I've also written another article on suggestions and advice on how you can limit that in your workshop. I'm not going to apply any one of those. By the way, I'm leaving the link in the description to that one as well. If I get a little bit of movement during the glue up, what I'll do is you can fix it afterwards by just squaring up the block before you start with the final you cut the final features onto the push block. So applying the glue, getting it into clamps, and having a cup of coffee while I wait for it to dry. So next time I'll see you as we'll be finishing off the push block. One hour and a cup of coffee later, and we're ready to finish off the push block before we can take it on a test drive. And it's really just two simple cuts. This is the old one, so we need to do a long cut along the length and then do a cross cut at the bottom here to form this heel, and that hooks over your workpiece as you push it through the blade when you make the cut. So I'll be taking the blank over to the the bandsaw to make those cuts. You can use either a bandsaw or you can even do it with a handsaw or a Japanese saw. The only important thing is that the long cut needs to be relatively square to the sides. Once again, it's related to the push block being perpendicular to your workpiece when you work. If that bottom cut is not square or squarish, it may tilt in use, and that's something you'd like to avoid. So I'll be taking you over to the bandsaw, setting up the bandsaw, making the two cuts, and then that is it for our new push block. Simple build, easy to use, especially if you are a beginner. And there's no reason why you should have or shouldn't have at least one of them lying around the table saw and protect your digits. If you're wondering why my other push block, this one, got chewed up, is I also use the push block to rip small or short thin strips, and it works really well for that. Do keep in mind that if you do use it in that manner, stand off to one side of the cuts and stay out of the firing line just in case you get a catch. But it's not the only way to rip thin strips on the table saw, and I've got plans available for a dedicated push block specifically for thin strips. And if you consider joining my Sharpen&Shavings Club on the website, you can get your hands on a free copy of the plans as well as other plans or project plans that I have available, and other free goodies as well, and you qualify for an immediate discount of 20% on anything else in the shop that your heart may so desire. I'm leaving the link at the bottom of the page as well as in the description. But that brings us to the end of another edition of Ply Creations. Thank you so much for joining me in my workshop. As always, I'm leaving the link to my website on the bottom of the page as well, and you'll find all the other links that I mentioned during the course of this episode in the description as well. But again, thank you for joining me. I hope you have a good one. Be safe in your workshop and be sure to use your push blocks. Until I see you again next time, have a good one. Cheers.